Listen, Al-Gaib! What's up, is a culture detective here investigating your favorite movies. And today it's like 1 a.m. right now. I'm tired as hell. I can immediately drop dead and fall asleep. But instead, what I'm gonna do is to do a review on Dune Part 2. Yeah. So finally, I watched Dune Part 2. Holy shit, this movie has been released for like a whole month already, at least in North America, and I've been planning to watch it forever, for a very, very long time. I was originally going to watch it with a group of friends, but everyone in the group chat, or most people in that group chat, decided to not reply, and then it is only until much later did I find out that a lot of them had already watched the movie, so that was a bit of an awkward situation. So instead, I went to watch Dune Part 2 today on 70mm film on IMAX in the most epic way possible at Hollywood at the Chinese theater with my friend Michelle, who is also a bit of a filmmaker, a little bit of film connoisseur herself. So yeah, I watched it on 70mm film on IMAX. It is the most proper, the most epic way of seeing it, and it is a humongous theater, and I paid $26 for that movie ticket, which is ridiculous, but I did it. And lo and behold, I finally was able to watch it. So Dune Part 2 is just like Dune Part 1 is directed by none other than French-Canadian director Denis Villeneuve, who is one of the most amazing and interesting and impressive directors working right now ever since the 2000s, and then of course he peaked in the 2010s with films like Incendie, Prisoners, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. And of course, when mentioning Dune, we also have to talk about the 1984 movie directed by David Lynch, which I haven't seen, but I will eventually. But it is just really interesting that Dune is a huge deal among filmmakers and among fans of novels and books. Dune inspired Star Wars. Dune is one of the most influential and important works of sci-fi literature of all times. And adapting Dune into film is a huge task and a ginormous responsibility. Another director who almost made Dune was Alejandro Jodorowsky, and there's a documentary out there called Jodorowsky's Dune, where we watch essentially what is the greatest movie never made. So, anyways, in the year 2021, Dune Part 1 is released. Was it 2021 or 2020? I believe it's 2021. So, Dune Part 1 was released, and I watched it in Hong Kong. Honestly, I thought visually it is amazing, but the story leaves a tiny, tiny, tiny bit to be desired, and I can't really put my finger on why. Maybe it's because the characters feel underdeveloped and the story feels a little underbaked, but the number one rebuttal for that is, hey, it's only part one. In part two things will start happening. Part one is mostly just setting things up in exposition, so I was like, sure. Also, it's very slow pace, and I don't mind that. I love a good, millions and hundreds of millions of dollar budget, big epic movie that is also slow paced and artsy at the same time. You know what? I love that idea. That is definitely not an issue for me. So, anyways, part one, I thought it was really good. Did it blow me away? Not really, but I still enjoyed it for the most part. Now we have part two, and oh my god, it is the talk of the town. Everyone's talking about Doom Part 2, everyone loves it. Every YouTuber, every uh, person on the internet, every movie critic just love the hell out of Doom Part 2. Almost every, not all of them, but almost every one of them love Doom Part 2. So much so that Doom Part 2 shot up the Letterboxd top 250 and landed at number 6. What? Wait a second. Number 6? So it beat all my favorite films. So it beat Parasite, it beat In the Mood for Love, it beat Yi Yi, it beat Spirited Away, it beat Citizen Kane, it beat 2001: A Space Odyssey, it beat Goodfellas. Really? Dune Part 2? Really? Is it really that good? So going into the movie, there's definitely a lot of hype. And honestly, did it live up to the hype? Kinda. So, first of all, let me just go out and state the fact. Dune Part 2 is much better than Part 1, and I enjoyed it so much more than Part 1. I think the story is so much more compelling and interesting and so much more action packed. It's even more beautiful. The cinematography and the production design of Dune Part 2 is honestly some of the best I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's a huge compliment. Every single shot on this film is a wallpaper. You can literally stop at any frame and it's a freaking wallpaper. It is gorgeous. And also, there's a sequence in the film that is shot in infrared. The scene where Austin Butler's fighting um, in the triangle fighting arena. I believe that scene is filmed in infrared. Looks amazing. And it's such an ingenious, such a simple yet ingenious idea. Apparently, they also made lenses specifically for this film. Oh my god! Like this film is so prestigious and so powerful that a company is doing that. You know, so it's crazy. And the production design is amazing. A lot of the production design is beautiful, jaw dropping, alien and otherworldly, yet at the same time they feel grounded. The aged props feel very properly aged. And this is, again, some of the best production design I've ever seen. No doubt. This is amazing. On a technical level, this film is an absolute masterpiece. And I think everyone is saying exactly the same thing. So I'm not going to go further because it's been said a million times. Now, let's talk about the story a little bit. There's a lot more action, and the characters are less stoic and dead inside. In part one, I feel like everyone's a little bit dead inside, but in here, they're a little bit more emotive and humane. And by that, I mean they gave the characters more humanness. There are more romantic moments between Paul Atreides and Chani, aka Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya. There are more fights and arguments. There are more happy moments and jokes as well. That sort of lights up the tension a little bit. And the action scenes, by the way, riveting. They are riveting, crazy, and exhilarating, and I really like that. There's a scene where Paul and Cheney shoots at helicopters with giant fire guns, and that scene was really riveting because everything unfolded in real time. The camera and the editing never cut away or pan away or anything. And you really feel the anxiety of that scene. You feel the weight of every explosion. Also, because I'm in a big theater, I'm watching it in a big theater. So every time something explodes, I could feel my seat shake. So that was pretty wild. There's a scene where Paul gives a speech in the South, I believe, and he's screaming at people. And this is actually some unexpectedly harrowing and breathtaking performance. Timothy Chalamet really embodied that, the Messiah or the Mahda role, and he's screaming at people, and it's actually really bone chilling. I feel it in my bones. This is like Shinzo Sasageyo. It just gives off the same vibes. Austin Butler fighting Paul at the end was also a really good scene. Very intense fight. I'm loving it. Speaking of which, Austin Butler, genuinely great in this film. Didn't see that coming, but Austin Butler really embodied this role and became this almost Joker-esque villain. You can tell how sociopathic he is by the way he smiles and just his overflowing confidence. It's just there. In contrast, Christopher Walken as the Emperor is kind of funny. Some people really liked it. Some people thought it's a very bad casting choice. I honestly think it's not bad. Um, but it is kind of funny. If that's not what Denis Villeneuve was going for, then maybe it sort of failed. But I think it kind of worked out in a way. And another thing that is kind of unrelated is aspect ratio. So last time I went to the Chinese theater to watch a film, aka my first time, is Oppenheimer. And one thing that I didn't like about Oppenheimer is the aspect ratio. It keeps changing, and it's so annoying. That didn't happen in Dune Part 2, thank God. For the most part, it's full IMAX 70 millimeters, so it's 1.43 to 1. Occasionally, it cuts a little bit shorter, but it's not 1.9. It's not 1.9. It's slightly less tall. I think it's like 1.6 to 1 or 1.5 to 1. It's really weird. But sometimes I would notice a tiny black bar on the top and the bottom. And then there are a couple moments whenever characters look into like an aim scope of a sniper, or they look into some sort of binoculars or something. It cuts to more of a 1.9 ratio. Um, yeah, but for the most part, the aspect ratios were not distracting and annoying, so thank God. Okay, so I've talked about the pros of this film. Now, the cons. So, yeah, unfortunately, I wish I like Dune Part 2 more. Again, I I don't know why. I don't know what I'm missing out on. A lot of people seem to be head over heels about this film. Honestly, I think it's really good. I think it's great, but it didn't blow my mind or anything. I think the story is still not as interesting as I thought it would be. This isn't a story with a lot of world building and twists and turns and different factions like Game of Thrones or Star Wars or anything like that. No, the story of Dune is actually really straightforward and simple. Dune can be summarized in like a paragraph, honestly. So it's actually really simple. It's about a guy who's from a rich family. He got dumped in the desert. Now he becomes the people of the desert and wants to fight back against the evil, powerful, you know, Empire and the Harkonnens, which are the bad guys. That's it. Very straightforward, nothing too fancy. So throughout the entire film, 2 hours and 45 minutes of Dune Part 2, it's mostly just Paul being on the Fremen's side, riding sandworms, talking to Cheney, talking to people, miracles, sort of like that throughout the whole thing. And there are some fights here and there, but it's mostly pretty simple. I think the characters are also pretty simple. They all act the same all the time. Zendaya's character, Cheney, literally is the same person in every single scene. Same for a lot of other characters, like Dave Bautista's character, but I don't really mind that because he's supposed to be a flat character. He's just a dumb, buff guy who keeps screaming and yelling. And that's actually a little bit entertaining. I think the only character that really made me root for him was Javier Bardem. He's probably my favorite character of Dune right now. He's funny and witty, but can also get serious at times. He's sometimes a comic relief, but sometimes he is really important to the story. And there's just something deep, like there's a certain depth about his character that I really like. But aside from that, most of the characters are not necessarily that interesting. Like if Rebecca Ferguson's character, Paul's mom, if she suddenly dies or something, I probably wouldn't have a lot of like a huge dramatic reaction because I don't really root for her that much, unfortunately. And that's probably the right thing to do because that's probably part of the setup for the next part, like part 3 or Dune Messiah. Another thing is that a lot of people sort of bring up is the weird appropriation of Islamic culture. The names and the aesthetic being very Islamic inspired. Um, I don't know because I'm not from that cultural background. I personally think that it's done in a very tasteful and interesting way, and I really liked it. But again, I cannot say on behalf of people from that cultural background. The music is just okay. Didn't really blow my mind or anything. Whenever something happens, whenever when Paul stood up on the sandworm, on the giant sandworm, it's like a revelation moment. It's like, oh my god. So the music becomes this very dramatic, and that's it. So there's nothing too special about it. The sound design is really good. Top-notch sound design. Sometimes the film is insanely loud. I look right and I see my friend just covering her ears. But sometimes the loudness works for the story. Like when Paul yelled, "Silence!" It's actually very loud. Some people were actually startled. And near the end of the film, when he stomped the ground, it was I felt like the ground actually shook. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, overall, I think Dune Part 2 is a really great film. Again, the production design and cinematography is just mind blown. Absolutely blown to pieces. This is art, guys. This is art. The story could be better, but what I do really like about the directing of Dune 2 and sort of the beautiful visuals and the slow editing makes it feel like a religious experience, which I guess is kind of the point here. You know, a savior from the prophecies suddenly shows up and rules the people, something like that. But I don't know, I feel like I'm missing something out. I'm not 100% blown away by this film, and I've been thinking what score I should give this film because I don't want to give in to public opinions, but at the same time, it's genuinely good and great. I am giving this film a strong 8 out of 10. Yes. So, have you seen Dune Part 2? Comments below, let me know. Subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. Maybe Dune Messiah will be even better. Who knows? You know what? I'm expecting Dune Messiah to be better. So,